I thought in half two, I thought the guys were more aggressive. They played with more confidence. I thought they did a better job of just basically executing. So, with the exception of the last play, I was pleased with the performance in the second half. First half, there was plays to be made and we didn't make them. When you look at things and they don't go well, is it scheme? Is it personnel? Is it coaching? And is it breakdowns? Is it bust? You look at all those things. I just felt like in the first half, honestly, it was a lot of guys. We didn't make a play when we had an opportunity to make a play, when balls were in the air and things like that. So we talked about it at halftime. We made some adjustments, came back in the second half. I appreciated the response. I thought the third down, fourth down stop was huge. In a situation where half one doesn't go the way you want, you come out, you get a big stop on 3 and 4, put the field position in our favor. So I appreciated the response.
What are the coaching points for the young linebackers this week?
Well, first off, in terms of being able to fit the run, they have two really good tailbacks. I think they've had a lot of success, especially over the last 2 years, of just being able to run the ball. So we got to get them in the right spots. That's always where it starts. So there's that element of it. And then we got to do a good job in underneath zone coverage. When they push the ball vertically down the field, they got to get depth in their drops and be able to kind of help out the secondary. Those would be the two main things.
In terms of complementing also like the secondary with Corum and Edwards being able to break big runs, how important will it be for the secondary to have good run support and tackling?
Yeah, it's always critical for the secondary to tackle well. You know, our defense, like I'm sure everyone's defense, there's times when the safeties are in the run fit where they're a primary fitter in the run game, and when they are in the fit, they got to do a really good job. And when they're not and they're extra, so to speak, in the fit, they've got to be able to get on the ground if guys get out. So they'll be very important, and we got to tackle well. I think those guys do a really good job breaking tackles. So.
What stands out to you about Tyler Stolsky?
Well, he got an opportunity to go in the game. And I thought he handled himself well. He made a tackle on a scrambling quarterback in space, which is, it looks easy until you have to go in and do it, and then it doesn't look so easy anymore. But he made it look easy. He did a nice job. He went in and executed his assignment. I think Tyler Stolsky is going to be a really good football player for us. Obviously, he's come in as a preferred walk-on. Last year, you kind of saw, all right, he's physical enough and he's athletic enough to do it. This year he's continued to progress. He's had to swap positions here and there just because of injury situations, so give him credit for that. So I think he's got a bright future. He's got to continue to get better. He's got to be consistent, handle all the things that go with playing linebacker, with running it and making checks and adjustments and being able to see one play ahead, be able to anticipate. But I think he's going to be a good player for us for sure.
What are the nuances you've seen now, Tyler, you've been able to have three quarterbacks and break some of that?
Well, I think it starts with knowing your job and knowing the assignment. I think then it goes to your film study and being able to understand route concepts. There's a music or a language to route concepts in terms of usually they're designed to work together, mesh together. They can't be independent for routes. And so when you get older, you kind of get a feel for what the concept should be. And then also he's got good vision now, and I have talked to him about this. Sometimes he gets a little over aggressive, and you're always walking that fine line between aggressiveness and recklessness. But there's a reason he has 3 interceptions, obviously, because he does a good job of reading and diagnosing and going to make plays, and you're always kind of walking that line. And to be honest, the best safeties do that, that I've ever been around. Obviously, Winfield was a similar type player. A guy I think underrated was Jacob Huff. Since I've been here, that I thought was a really good player and had a really good feel for being around the ball. We've been fortunate to have some guys like that. Even Jordan Howden and what he's been doing at the next level. So we've been around some good ones, and Tyler's as good as any of them. And but I think it has to do with just the instincts, the recognition. It goes into the understanding of the route concepts, the film study, and then he's just got a knack for it too. I mean, the reality is all good players have some level of ability that others don't. Like, I don't have ability to play in the Big Ten. And no matter how hard I worked, I wouldn't have had it. But if you have that minimum talent level and then you have the work ethic and the character, you usually become a good player. So
What's your assessment of JJ McCarthy?
he's a stud, man. I mean, like he's complete, and it feels like 90% of his passes. I don't know that he's thrown an incomplete pass on third down. Like he's a dude, and then on top of his ability to throw the ball, you know, he'll make you miss, and he'll scramble, and he can pull it down and hurt you. I think that really showed up in the Rutgers game. There were some instances on third down where Rutgers had coverage, and then boom, pulls it down, gets a first down, prolongs the drive, and then it ends up in the end zone. So I just think he's a heck of a player.
Have you reached out to Harrison yet this week?
I talk to Harris Simic all the time. He's a good friend of mine. So yeah, I mean, we were talking about, his daughters and my kids, and I mean, football didn't really come up. We didn't really talk about Michigan or anything, just our personal lives. So
Michigan converts third down to 57%, and you talked about how JJ is able to make those throws and completions on third down. How important will it be for you guys to get those stops in this big game?
yeah, you got to get the ball back for your offense. They play complementary football. They don't play a lot of snaps on defense. Why? Because they're good on defense, and then they run the ball on offense and are good on offense. So it's a good formula. It's a formula that we've kind of over the years at times done really well ourselves. But I think the reason they're so successful on third down, a lot of it has to do with they run the ball so well. Their third downs, most of them are shorter third downs. And if you peel back the onion and you look at the teams that are like really awesome on third down, usually it's because they run the ball well, and then they get into 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. If you're living the life of like 3rd and 10, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 12, you're usually not as good on third down. So they keep them to a minimum because they run it. And then when they do get into the longer yardage ones, like I said, they've completed all the ones they've thrown, and if it's not there, they'll scramble. So, it's something that we've got to do a really good job of, because that's how, we can get our offense's possessions, is to be able to get third down stops.
Some young defensive linemen last week that popped on film. Which ones stood out to you?
For us, I think Devin Eastern showed up again. He's just quietly, getting better every week. And it's been cool to see. I think people see his frame and they see his size, and it's always, and we go through this every year. And now, as a guy who's been in it for a while, it's like you see a guy like that, and you're like, oh, he's going to be a dominant force the first time he steps on the field. I never really seen that before. Like guys got to like work at it. They got to mature. They got to grow. They got to develop. They got to develop as men. Their work ethic needs to come along, and it's just starting to come together for him. And the cool thing is, I think he's got even way more there. I think he can be even better in the run game. I think he has a lot of potential in the pass game, so it'll be fun. He's still a young player. By no means has he figured it all out, but it's just been cool to see his growth. And I thought Danny Strigo played a really good game. It might not have been like a bunch of quote unquote splash plays. He did a nice job on the quarterback. I thought he set good edges. Thought he compressed the pocket. He just, to me, had a really, really strong game. So
What did you see from Anthony Smith in the second half?
glimpses of things that he can do. He's like, I don't know if my math's right, but I think he's probably like in that Devin mold from 2 years ago of like, you see Anthony and you see flashes, and, it's like, oh, what he can be. Well, what he can be is a dominating, defensive end for us. And so I thought he showed some flashes of that pretty consistently in training camp. But then you get from training camp and you go into games, that's different, like that's a different story. And I thought he did his job so far to this season. But I do feel like in the second half last week, you started to see him flash and make some plays. And he's another guy I think has a tremendous ceiling. He's a great kid. He works his butt off. He cares. And I think he has a really high ceiling as well. And we're going to need both of those guys to continue to develop for what we're going to need to do the second half here season.
Michigan's top 20 in red zone touchdown rate. How important is it to find number one, who I think leads the entire country in receiving touchdowns?
Yeah, well, most of his touchdowns come from outside the green zone, the red zone. They've thrown one pass in third down in the tight green zone because they usually don't last that long. They usually score before they get there, or they get down there and run it in. That being said, we obviously have to be aware of where he is because he is catching so many touchdown passes. But like I said, a lot of them are more up the field before they even get into the green zone. So it starts with stopping the run down there. Obviously, I think their play action game is really good. So if we can handle that and get him into some obvious passing situations, then we got to be able to hold up in coverage and be able to win some one-on-ones. Down there, the reality is even when you are playing zone, it's still one-on-ones. There's not a lot of there's not enough space to defend to just say, hey, we're going to drop into zones and just tackle people. Like you got to match up and you got to play them tight. So.
Time for one or two more. PJ talked about in 2017 how you guys went to the Michigan Stadium and people were kind of looking around and on the situation and the helmets and whatever. What makes you kind of confident that you guys are beyond that and poised for this?
I mean, because our guys have played in a lot of big games against a lot of good teams. So I think that it's just from that standpoint, it's you got an opponent who's a talented opponent. We had a talented opponent last week. You got to go out and you got to play. I think it'll be a good atmosphere, and I think that you can't make it about someone else. You got to make it about yourself and going out and playing your best game. So, I think our guys have had a really good 2 days. We got to finish it out, but I've been pleased how they've worked. So.
What have you seen from Jack Henderson, second on the team tackles, and obviously recorded another interception last week? Just what have you seen from his growth since he got here?
I think he just became comfortable in the scheme, in the defense, and what he's doing now is what he did on film, on his college film. And obviously that was at a lower level. He comes in the spring, and he was kind of finding himself. Even at the beginning of training camp, he was kind of like finding himself. By the end of training camp, he was flashing a lot. We started out the first few games, and it was okay doing his job. But I think since that time, probably the North Carolina game on, he started to play and make some big time plays. And so, here's what I would say: we're not surprised. That's why we recruited him. That's what we saw on film. But it may have come along a little bit faster than maybe you would have thought to get to that point. And that's the cool thing about coaching. A guy has potential, but he'll control the timeline. That's what we always talk to the guys about. Like, hey, listen, you have a potential. If you just do the required work, there will be a time frame that you'll get there, but it won't be the time frame that you want to get there. If you want to speed the time frame up on development, you got to do unrequired. Unrequired is extra work. And Jack takes care of his body. He's in every morning, hitting cold tubs, the sauna, constantly stretching, constantly watching film, constantly doing work after practice. So his process is off the charts, and I think he still has some more to grow. And we're excited about getting him there and seeing what he's capable of doing. So,
All right. Thanks, Coach.
thanks, guys.
Your red zone efficiency being so much more improved here last few weeks?
Being aggressive. I think that was the one thing you learned early in the season. We struggled at times. I think back to the Eastern Michigan game. We called the keep. And that was one of those calls. You want back. You wish you would have just ran the ball on the 1 yard line. It's just other things that come into play. In North Carolina, we got down inside the 3 and ended up punching it in right there before the half. So I was excited about that. But just being aggressive, trusting what the guys are doing, trusting our game plan, players, not plays, putting those guys in positions to make plays, using them in the appropriate fashion. I think that's been one of the biggest things that we've done as a staff, adjustment-wise.
What has Zach Evans shown you from camp to now?
Again, you asked a question about Darius a few weeks ago. I'm not surprised by Zach doing this. He's done it over and over again. It's just consistency, throughout training camp, being a young player, learning how to practice, learning how to prepare. That's been one thing that I've been impressed with him. And just the ups and the downs, not getting too down when things don't go his way. He's been just very, very diligent in how he's taken care of his body this year too. He's been a guy that has been banged up in the past. He's not that way right now. He's really taken pride in that, been in the training room, And then been with Coach McKissick-Luke a lot, just spending a lot of time with him in meetings, getting him himself prepared. And like I said, I'm not surprised by the way he's gone out and done things the last couple games.
And Daniel about the success early on in the passing game the last couple of weeks, and both of them mentioned Aiken's prep work
Yep.
to lead up to that. What has changed or extended with that?
I'm proud of Ethan because you learn from the first 3 games. Been well documented. You learn from the North Carolina game, and the thing that I keep saying to him is, by the time he gets to the game, he has played the game in his head. And I think that's been one huge adjustment, is he's not getting to the game and it's not too fast for him. That's what I mean by that. When you've played the game in your head a number of times throughout the week, whether it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then you get to the game and you've seen that look a number of times. Hey, they threw something a little bit different at you, and it's not something that throws you off. That's been one thing that he's done. He comes into the meeting on Tuesday, and he's already prepared himself for first and second down. He's come into the meeting this morning. He's already prepared himself for third down. He may not know the answer, as thoroughly as we'll have it by the time we hit game time, but he's not guessing in the meeting. That's been one thing that I think has been huge, and just his preparation on his own. We only get a certain amount of time with the guys, so they have to be able to prepare on their own. We call it unrequired, and their unrequired is extremely important in the film room because we only get 20 hours a week with them. So it's one of those things where they have to put that time in, and he's done that, and he's changed his best week to week in that area of his preparation.
What went into the decision to give 3 different tailbacks 10 or more carries?
I think Nick did a fantastic job of just rotating those guys through. It's one thing that we talked about as a staff, and I think all 3 of them had a great week of practice. They've had a good week of practice this week too, and I think that has been the biggest thing that we made an adjustment with after Northwestern. Darius was in a great rhythm too. Part of the thing that you have to do at running back is keep those guys in rhythm. If you don't, then all of a sudden they might be seeing something that's not there, not hitting where we want them to schematically. But Nick did a great job of, hey, I got to get this guy going, I got to get that guy going, and then they just played off each other. And then the last thing with it is it's an unselfish group. We preach that on our offense and in our team and our program. We want to be selfless. And if one guy wants to have all the carries, they're not going to be successful. And they took a committee approach, and it showed, and it paid off.
Michigan's allowed 13 points in the first 3 quarters of their games so far this year. What makes them so good?
So it's great front. It's great set of linebackers. Secondary's elite too. It's a typical defense. You would look at that defense and you think that's a playoff team, and they are playoff style defense. It's shown over the last 2 years. They're experienced. I think they have eight guys that are I think either returning or seniors, on their defense, and the biggest thing that I see on the defense, and I was telling the quarterbacks that this morning, is that they run to the football. It's one thing that I know every defensive coach takes pride in. I know Coach Rossi takes pride in it with his defenses. They run to the football, and they're going to get all 11 hats to the ball. They might give up an explosive or a bigger play, but you see, whether it's blue or white jerseys, they are running to the football, and I think it's kind of refreshing to watch when you see that with a defense. But obviously we have to have our effort and our how has to be at an all-time high this week because they play with a ton of effort. They play with a ton of how. So we're excited about the challenge.
How integral is Chris Jenkins?
He's a difference maker interiorly. They do a lot of things. They on first and second down they do a really good job of holding their gap. They're very active. They do a good job of mixing up when they want to bring pressure on first and second down, and then when they go to third down, they want to be able to heat you up a little bit. And I think they do a good job of balancing when they want to be able to bring pressure and when they want to play coverage. You don't really know when it's coming, and I think that they do a great job defensively on that. I think the other thing that defensively they do is they play their nickel a ton, their nickel personnel package. So they can do a lot of different things when they get into third down. They can do that and they can bring pressure, they can play coverage. But Chris he's impressive, and he's active. They're all active up front. They're active at linebacker. They get to the quarterback. We're gonna have to do a great job up front, trusting what we see him with whatever movement they bring and being physical and striking.
Have you talked to your mentor, Coach Rossi, this week?
No, not really. Obviously, when we get into game week, the one thing that we all get bogged down and we all start working. He's obviously a guy that I do talk to at times when it's just just different people that I want to get advice from and things like that, but nothing in regards to Michigan.
With a team that likes to dominate the ball, like on offense in the possession, how do you guys have to value every possession, every snap more?
Sustained drives. It's the same thing every single week that we preach to the offense. We want to be great on first and second down, which leads us to be great on third down. If we're going 3 and out or we're not having drives that are sustaining, then we're going to be in a position where Michigan's offense is going to be able to be on the field, and they're going to be able to control the clock. It's a little bit of an interesting thing where we want to control the clock, but there's a point in time when you have to pick and choose when you want to be able to push the ball down the field and be explosive, but then you also want to be able to control the clock against this team too, because that's their mentality. They want to play great defense, they want to control the clock, they want to run the football, and they do a very good job at it. It's been pretty well documented through the first 5 games the way they're winning football games, playing great defense, and they're playing clock control offense.
Where have you seen Daniel Jackson take the biggest jump from game 1 to what you saw last week?
Daniel never ceases to impress me, man. He's a true professional. I know Coach Fleck said after the game on Saturday that he didn't run that route and he didn't work on that route at all, and that we ended up scoring on the 4th and 2. And he just pays attention in meetings when Coach Simon's saying something. It might be he's saying it to Corey or he might be saying it to Elijah. He's speaking to the whole group, and Daniel takes that personally, and Daniel treats that like a true pro. And I think that's where it shows up, because he's a consummate pro, and he knows, all right, I have to be able to listen. I have to be able to know that every single position, every single technique, and then it shows up on game day. Again, his preparation, we talked about with Ethan, Daniel's preparation has been that way too, and it shows up on game day. If you aren't prepared and you aren't in a position where you're paying attention to meetings and you're not working hard in the unrequired, you're not going to have success on the field on Saturdays. Daniel does everything off the field properly, and he does it at a high level.
Yeah, that 4th and 2 Ethan looked like he was trying to gesture to go for it. Obviously, you guys are going to do what you're going to do, but just to see the quarterback kind of show that.
He's confident. He's in a good place mentally. He's confident. We want to, every single week, we want to continue to keep him on that trajectory of playing it at a high confidence. We talk about it offensively all the time. We want to believe we're one of the best. You're the best position group, in the Big Ten, best position group in the country, and you want to have that mentality. Everybody does, and I think that Ethan, he's in that position where he wants to do that.
Let's try to get us done before the alarms went off.
What is it?
It's a nationwide cell phone test.
Well, at least our cell phones are
A
working.
couple minutes early. Is there any more to answer Andy's question?
No, I'm good.
Okay, one more for Ryan, and then we're all set.
What goes into executing the tush push?
Mentality, physicality. I think it was a really good idea that we had as a staff. Coach Fleck mentioned it. As we went throughout the week. Man, this thing's really going off, huh? Oh, mine didn't go off that time. But we want to Coach Fleck brought it to my attention too earlier in the week. Again, as coaches, you want to make sure what you're struggling at and what you're weak at, you want to address it, whether it's personnel, whether it's scheme, whether it's coaching, and we looked at it. Okay, what did we do wrong in that Northwestern game that we didn't execute it at a high level? So we made some adjustments. We did some certain things, and it ended up working out. So obviously this week we'll have adjustments that we want to make and go from there.
All right, thanks, Coach.
Thank you. See you guys.